On a recent episode, I showcased how I sideloaded the Half-Life campaign levels into Opposing Force. This was more or less a proof of concept that one could replace the original weapons with their expansion pack counterparts. I was considering doing a follow-up, but instead of manually inserting the OP4 weapons into each Half-Life map, I would do a full-scale automated weapon swap. I had the idea of coding a program that would perform a 1-to-1 conversion of the weapons. Anytime there would be a 357 Magnum, it would be replaced with the Desert Eagle. Anytime there was a Hornet gun, it would be replaced with the Shock Rifle, etc. The first phase of this project was to write a program that could read the entity data from each map and produce a report that contained a list of all the entities that appear in the game. I also wanted to know how many of each entity there are and which maps they appear in. This data would let us see under the hood of the engine and produce a lot of interesting information. For example, I know of only 4 crowbars in Half-Life. 1 in the Hazard Course, 1 in Anomalous Materials, 1 in Blast Pit, and 1 in the Trash Compactor. If there were any more, I would be thrilled to discover where they were hidden. After reviewing the first iteration of the data, what immediately struck me was not extra items, but missing items. For some reason, there was only one item suit, the entity used for the hazard suit. But I knew full well there are at least 2. One is in the lab and one is in the hazard course. So why was my program saying otherwise? I looked at the map files individually and learned that the suit in the hazard course was the only item suit in the game, strictly speaking. The one in the lab is actually an entity called World Items. This seems to be some sort of general use entity that spawns either a suit, a security card, an HEV battery, or an antidote canister, and they appear throughout the game. So I modified my code to not only tell me how many entities there are, but also to identify some of their properties. It now tells me what kind of enemy a monster maker spawns, what kind of item a breakable crate will drop, what model a monster generic uses, and what item a world items will spawn. Not only was I now able to see that 2 of the world items in the game spawn a mysterious Type 36, but also there are actually 4 that spawn a hazard suit, making a total of 5 suits in the game. But where? My program showed me that the extra 3 are in the Lambda core teleporter map. This makes sense. When you reach this level, you do see 3 empty hazard suit chambers. And even more, when you reach this area in Half-Life Source, the 3 suits are actually present. I had assumed that the developers added these into the game when they ported it to Source, seeing as they did make several manual modifications as well to showcase the physics and skybox effects. Thinking that I might have made a discovery, I went to Google looking for answers, and I found this Twitter thread by a user named You Are Not So Daily Half-Life. It's an interesting read, and I'll leave the link to it in the description. Essentially, this community has already discovered these suits and determined that, due to their placement, which was touching the walls, a glitch occurs, causing the suits to spawn but fall through the floor. In fact, if you use no-clip and fly directly below the chambers, you can pick one up.
Quite a few handsome specimens were collected from the border world and brought back this way, before the survey members started being collected themselves.
If you open the map in an entity editor, move the suits away from the wall by 1 unit, they will spawn in-game. In Half-Life Source, the size of the entity was changed so they do not intersect with the wall, therefore they do not glitch through the floor and are present in the game. Earlier I mentioned the antidote item. There is actually one item antidote in the base Half-Life game, in the deathmatch map data core. Just as with the suits, the antidote was placed against a wall and passes through the floor when the map loads up. It too can be picked up using no-clip.
Antitoxin 100%.
And it too can be moved away from the wall to spawn in-game.
Antitoxin 100%.
I've put a link in the description if you want to download the corrected Lambda core and data core maps. I also mentioned the 2 world items that have their item spawn settings set to Type 36. They are placed in the storage bunker in Power Up, but of course there is nothing here in-game. I attempted to place this in a map, but it doesn't spawn anything. It's probably something that was removed, never finished, or just something like a health kit that was never coded to spawn from the world items. Let me know in the comments what you think it could have been. If you liked learning about the entities in the game, let me know if you want me to explore some of the other intricacies I discovered from my entity report. And as always, thanks for watching, guys.
Hey, catch me later, I'll buy you a beer.